Okay, how'd that go? Let's see. Was that harder than average? Hands up for that. About average? Easier than average? Okay, I like that. Well, congrats on making it through all the mini exams. All we have left in this semester is the project. So what we're going to do with the rest of class, I'm just going to walk you through. This is one of my favorite bits of slides. So I just want to walk you through a bit of like some best practices I've compiled over the years for putting together technical presentations to an audience. And then I'm going to show you some of these examples. You'll remember these from the beginning of the semester, but I've posted them here just to give you a bit of a guide. I want to talk about some of them. They're not all perfect. In fact, like none of these examples are perfect. I've even talked to some of these students after the semester is over about some of their imperfections. And I actually just talked to Olga about hers, and she says she would change a lot of things. So I want to talk to you about some of these. But before we do that, we're just going to talk through some of the best practices I have for putting together slides. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. I like slides generally. But then I truly want to leave a lot of time at the end of class for you to talk to your group mates, and then we can chat about your projects and such. So I don't want to take the rest of class to do this. So this is just a bit of guidance for you. These are just some general principles. The first one is keep it simple. Like this is a nice slide, I think. We have a title. I'm telling you to keep it simple. And in the process, I'm giving you some information about this. The first thing is I have a subtitle. So I'm telling you the main point of this slide, which is to keep it simple. But then I'm giving you some extra information as the subtitle. I want you to focus on one main idea per slide. So I'm sort of giving you more information about my main point, which is in bold letters at the very top in large text with some supporting evidence. And then I have a nice little figure doing something or other on the screen. You'll remember this one. This is like the histogram of coffee consumption per capita in 2019, or 2000, sorry, whatever that year is. So that's the first slide. Keep it very, very simple. You also want to, you're gonna have a lot of things to say about all the work you've done. You're putting in a lot of work to put together a presentation. And so you'll feel sort of a bit of motivation to say a lot of things to your audience. You want to talk about, like, you're going to feel like you want to talk about all the different bits and pieces of information and process that have gone into putting your presentation together. Don't do that. Keep it simple and highlight the main ideas with what you're doing. So here, what I'm doing, there's a lot going on in this figure, right? A bunch of box plots and like the relevant context in the figure. What I'm doing, maybe somewhat inadequately, but what I'm attempting to do here is highlight for you one key feature of my figure, which is the medians. There's a lot going on, but what I want to highlight is the medians. And so what I've done is give you a bit of information using like highlighting of the medians to take your eyeballs and put them in the place that I want them. I want your eyeballs focused on the median, which allows me to communicate my main point, which, if you remember, I was asking you questions about which years have a median higher than or lower than 5 kilograms per capita. And so what I did, if you remember, is I highlighted the medians. And that pointed your eyeball in the place that I wanted it. And I've removed a lot of details. So I haven't included numbers on the box plot. I've just given you sort of the medians. How many of you like this figure? Hands up if you like it. Hands up if you dislike it. Are there ways we can improve this figure? Yeah? What are maybe some ways? I haven't asked you a question like this in a while. Darren? So yeah, maybe get rid of the upper and lower whisker. Yeah. I actually do too. Yeah. So one way we could improve this is by doing this horizontally, which I think is generally a little easier to read. So yeah, I actually really agree with that. What else? Okay. So I think this is a reasonably good figure. You can make it better. I think if I were making this today, I made this last semester, so some of these things might be different now. I would probably increase the size of the medians, so I'd make it even bolder, so it's easier to see kind of what I'm trying to point you to. Okay, so horizontal box plot here. You want to use colors if you can. If you use just black and white, sometimes that's a little boring. Like, our eyeballs are drawn to color. So what I'm using here is a color to point your eyeball to the place on the screen that I'm trying to communicate. So I'm using color. I'm also using a bit of annotation here. So I have an arrow pointing to the box that I'm trying to indicate, and I have a little extra information about what I'm saying, what I'm trying to communicate with this box plot. So I've highlighted it, and then I'm giving you some text to communicate the main point. And I'm using an arrow to communicate where on the figure I'm trying to communicate with. This is, I don't use this a lot, but often this is very useful. And then you can use bold or other text features to make your point. How could we improve this? My figures aren't perfect. But this one is, it seems. Okay, so the next thing is try to maintain sort of style consistency across your slides. I like things very simple and clean looking. Like, I don't like a lot of different parts. And generally what I do is I have one font. This is Times New Roman. I was getting into a raging debate during the review session last night about the font of my website, which just changed. I use Times New Roman in slides. I actually use something slightly different on my website. But generally, you want to maintain consistency of the fonts and the styling, if you can, throughout your presentation. So you can change the fonts in Python. You can also change the fonts in whatever slide tool you're using. So just, keep it sort of consistent as you go through. It makes it look a little bit more professional. Anyone disagree with this? Like one font? I had a student disagree with this, who likes two different fonts, like using two different fonts on the same slide, but matching them. I had a student, and I sort of agree with that in some cases. Often you'll see very professional presentations using two different fonts. I think 3 is too many in general, but 2 is really nice, or at least it can be. Okay, so here I'm giving, so I've a bit of an extra title on my figure to give a bit more context. So you want to use context whenever you can. Often you're going to be so deep in the weeds on your projects, you're going to forget that some of the terms you're using aren't familiar to most people. So what I'm doing here is giving some extra context. So I have vertical and horizontal axis labels, and then I'm also giving some extra context in the figure title. I think this is maybe a little bit noisy. There's too many words going on this figure. But in general, you want to give the context that so that a person who isn't so familiar with what you're doing can understand the variables and the context for what's going into your figures. So yeah, axis labels, units, be sure to include units when relevant, and then try to emphasize the main point of what you're doing. Any questions here? Y'all like this figure? Hands up if you like this. Hands up if you would do it differently. Okay, no one's brave enough. Or maybe it's just a great figure. The next thing is to think about what your audience would need to know to understand. This is similar to the previous one, giving context. But if I just give this figure without specifying to an audience what Q1 is, like most of the time, like you're in this class, you know what Q1 is. We've talked about this in context. But even if I gave this figure to you, you'd have to, like, even though we've covered it, you'd have to go back and recall what Q1 is. So just knowing what your audience knows and being as helpful as you can with the information on screen, you just want to be very audience focused. Like center what you're doing on your audience and make it as easy for your audience to understand as possible. This is one of those undervalued tips. I think often we want to communicate something that sounds important or like technical by using technical jargon, and that's just almost always a mistake. You want to communicate to your audience in the simplest way possible with as little jargon as you can. Q1 is fine in the context that we were talking about quartiles and box plots, but in general, you want to remove as much of the technical jargon as you can. Okay. Any questions about this? Anyone disagree? Okay, no disagreement. I've fully convinced you of everything that I'm saying. I love it. And then the next thing is when you have a slide up, you want to try to minimize how much work your audience is doing mentally. Like, I think this is about the limit of text on screen. You may have noticed this semester, like, I generally don't like a lot of text on a screen, which I think makes communicating much easier. I'm talking to you as there's text on the screen, and as you're listening to me talk, you're looking at the screen and trying to read what's on the screen as I'm saying words to you. And you can't really take both in at the same time, right? This is happening to you in your brain right now. So what you want to do is give bits and pieces of information that are most relevant so that when your audience is looking at your slides, they can also hear what you're saying. Otherwise, all you have to do is put a bunch of words on the screen and then walk away. And that's not a very good presentation. So I think this is about the limit. I have a nice box plot here. I have a little bit of information about medians and maximums, but generally don't do more than this. Do you all agree? How many of you think you could go more text than this? No one? How many of you think this is too much text? Okay, for most people, this is exactly right. Wow, I'm just perfect today, it sounds like. Okay, so really nice. This is more text, but I think all of this is actually kind of relevant to what I'm about to say. How many of you have presented to an audience more than 10 times? How many of you have presented data to an audience more than 10 times? Okay, so a lot of you have experience talking to an audience. Not many of you have experience presenting figures to an audience. Even I've been teaching for so long, and I present like almost every day. Even before I come to class, I generally kind of plan out what I'm doing. And the more I do it, the less I have to like rehearse beforehand. But when I was new to presenting, I found it very useful to actually sit down and talk through exactly what I was about to say. You all have much less experience than I do. You will gain more experience as you go through college. When I was in your place in college, I had about the same amount of experience as you do. And I found it very useful to sit down and actually talk through what I'm about to say. And I think it's especially important to rehearse because you're presenting for 3 minutes. It's much harder to present in a short amount of time than it is to present in a long period of time. People run over class, like in your classes, people like run over often because it's hard to condense information quickly. So it's especially important for you to rehearse. So about 2 minutes or 3 minutes per group. You want about 1 minute per slide. I think if you go any faster than that, you can do it, but it's generally pretty challenging. Make sure the order is as you'd expect. What I want from you generally is to have a descriptive slide. Show me what you're doing. Show me what the data is showing you first, and then run your tests. So if you have a scatter plot, I want to see a distribution potentially. These aren't hard and fast rules, but show me maybe distributions of your data, and then show me your scatter plot with a regression. So show me the descriptives first, and then run your tests. I want to know what's in your data before I see your tests, so that I can know and be convinced as an audience member that what you're doing is appropriate. And then make sure you sort of have items for what you're trying to say. So some people even script these things out, which has worked really well in the past for presentations. When I go into class, I often have a script, or not like a full script, but an outline at least of the different things I want to talk about. So it's important to do those things for these presentations. And then you're going to want to talk about your process. You're going to want to talk about like how difficult it was to merge the two data sets, or like the transformations that you walked through, all the ones that you didn't run and all the ones that you did run. Don't do that. Cut out everything extraneous. You have 3 minutes and 2 pages in your draft, and that's not enough to tell me all the hard work that you did. The point of what we're doing with these presentations and with the communication is to focus on the most important ideas. Cut out as much as you can. This is a hard process. That's one of the hardest things to do, is to cut out what's not relevant. There's a saying, all these bad terms from the writing world, but in the writing world, in addition to shitty first drafts, there's also kill your babies, which sounds terrible, but that's what writers often say. Deleting paragraphs is very hard to do because you've committed so much work to writing the paragraph, but often cutting the paragraph out is the right thing to do. So be thinking about those things. This is where I would do a live in-class example of putting a slide together, but I heard from you that you actually want more time in class to chat with your group mates. I'll also be around, so I'm not actually going to do this. Any questions about any of this? I think, yeah.
It says aim for 2 minutes per group and then a minute per slide. What if we have 3 people in our group? We go like then 3 minutes, a little longer.
So aim for 3 minutes. Yeah, this says 2, but aim for 3. I think that's in the description. Yeah. So if you have 3 people in your group, maybe 1 minute per person. But even if you have a larger group, aim for 3 minutes. Yeah, or even a shorter group, you can still aim for 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes per group. I guess this is a typo. All right. You want to see some examples? Would that be nice? So this is the first example. Olga is one of the TAs, along with Tommy, and she was in the class in the fall a year ago. That semester we didn't cover as much as we did this semester, So the analysis isn't at the same level as what I'm expecting from you. But, the students in that semester did not come in with a stats prereq, so we weren't able to cover as much. But this, I think, is a good indication of the general kind of style of presentation that I'm looking for. I thought the analysis was good, and the presentation was good. They had a title slide. You don't really need this, so you could just put the title on the main on the first slide. They also used time series, which was fine for that semester, but we need more caution in this semester. So they had a first slide, which was just, they had a bit of a title. Olga says she would do this a lot differently today, but I think in terms of flow, this is pretty good. So there's, two descriptive figures of fertility rates and GDP. So you'll remember this. They're asking whether economic recessions affect the decision to have children in the short term. So essentially, like the price, the income elasticity of demand for children, which is a weird way of thinking about it. Economists are weird. But if you have less money, children are expensive, as I'm finding out. And if you have less money because of a recession, then you may have fewer children. And so what they did is they actually took GDP and compared that to fertility rates. You'll notice some problems of autocorrelation in this figure. Like you're trained to see these the problems with this kind of data in a way that my students weren't that semester. But let me just point a few things out to you. So this is, I think, a great slide. Like putting aside the statistical problems with this figure, this is an amazing figure, amazing slide in my mind. There's a title. So we're comparing fertility against GDP. And then the subtitle, and you can make all of this better. Olga says she would if she was doing this today. But there's a subtitle here, which is every 1% increase in the GDP growth is associated with a 3-point increase in the fertility rate. So she does the work for the audience. She ran a regression. She's not showing you a regression table. She's giving you the coefficient, that beta 1, in English. And she's giving you a p-value. So she's telling you how confident we are this is not coming from 0. And she's interpreting it in English. There's no mention of the regression equation, which I think can be useful, it can be not useful, but she's making this very simple for the audience. And then she's giving a figure. So then she gives the model and then some information about some of these outliers. I think this is a very good figure. I'm going to be updating these examples next semester with your work. So give me even better work than this if you can. But this, I think, is a great example. So we have clear communication. We're interpreting it in English. We're giving just enough information for the audience to understand what's going on. Okay, and I've taken more than 3 minutes to talk through her slides. Okay, should we do another one, or do we want to talk? Hands up if you want another one. Hands up if you want to talk. All right, one more. Example 2, and you can access these on the website. So this is another one of my favorites from the fall of 24. So this was an example of another sort of like family kind of economic question. This is before I had a child, so I chose these before I had a child, so unrelated. So the question was, is there a relationship between the rate of single-parent households and voting turnout? It's very hard for a single parent to go to the polls because they have to get childcare or maybe take their child with them. So the question is related to decision-making. I thought this was a great question, which I'd actually never thought about before. For those who it's harder to go to the polls, do those people go to the polls less? And as an economist, you would say, I would expect there to be a negative relationship here. So on the vertical axis, we have the outcome variable, which is turnout. And then on the horizontal axis, we have single parent households. And what Caitlin did here, she actually gave us the regression equation. She definitely gave us the p-value. So she gave all of this in sort of mathematical form. The figure is nice, and she interpreted what she saw in English. I think the interpretation sentence, we could make it better. I think we could also improve just the way some of the model is communicated. But in general, this is very, very clear, I think. And this is all done in one slide, which is very challenging to do. But I think this is a really nice template for communicating a somewhat complicated idea very simply. She has a lot of data. She ran a statistical model. She told us what her question was. She presented a figure of the model. She presented the model results, and then she communicated all of that in English, all with one slide. I think this is pretty amazing. All right, any questions here? I think a lot of you will be able to do a lot more than this, so including control variables and such. But this is, I think, a good template to follow for putting your presentations together. Okay, so there are two more if you want to go through them. I think we'll end it here. I'll be around till the end of class, and even afterwards. I have a class at 2:30, so I can't stay longer than that, but I'll be here. One last thing. If we get, course evaluations are live. If we get more than a 60% response rate, I'm going to bring coffee into the final. So when you're leaving your course evaluations, we take these very seriously, especially for a class like this, it's different than it was like a year ago. We take the student feedback very seriously. When I read through the course evaluations every semester, I filter it through an AI that filters out all of the trolls. So when you leave your comments, leave it in a way that's easy for me to understand what you're saying. So if you have feedback, positive, I want to hear that. I want to know what went really well for you, what worked in this class. I also want to know what didn't work so that we can change it for future classes. Think of this as leaving feedback that will make the experience of the next cohort better. We take these comments very seriously. And don't be a troll, because I won't read it. And if we hit 60%, I'm bringing coffee in. So I'll be around until the end of class and a little bit after. Good luck with your projects. Also, congrats making it through the class.